and like happy 10th anniversary. How does it feel?
You know what? It feels I not real in
Yeah.
some way. Like I did an interview for my last book, Hive Struck, that came out, in 2024. And one of those written interviews where you go
Mhm.
back and forth, a written
Yeah.
kind of written exchange. And it was, he asked about my first book as well. And I said that, my first book came out when I was 41. It was accepted when I was 40.
Yeah.
And at that point, there had been a lot of trials and tribulations and detours. And, I didn't even know that I'd have a first book
Yeah.
ever at one point. And so then when it happened, it was like a really big deal for me personally. And then I got kind of swept up because the book ended up winning the Norma Farber First Book Award from not the Academy, the Poetry Society of America.
Whoa.
And then a couple poems in it also won the Caribbean writer Cecile de Jongh Poetry Prize. So I went from like 20 years trying to get published to like, the book being published and then this kind of roller coaster. And then, it's just been kind of like nonstop for the
Mhm.
last 10 years. And then also things like pandemics and fascist coups and all these other things that have happened that when I realized, oh, it's 10 years had passed,
Mm.
it it feels not real, It feels like it was last month in some ways, but then in other ways it feels like it never happened.
Yeah. Congratulations. I think that's well, a large deal, especially like I think given that you felt that, it would never happen and it happened in this big way. I think that's really lovely. And I think in some ways that's my dream as well. I'm like, okay, I'm sitting on a gold mine, people. You don't know it as yet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's good that there's a lot of conversations now happening about like not thinking like a capitalist
Hmm.
in this. And I think capitalism has me thinking, it has us, all of us thinking in terms of productivity and timelines and very rigid idea of success. And I'm glad that people are finally talking, especially for artists.
Yeah,
Like there is no timeline for artists. You
yeah,
know, um, John Milton wrote Paradise Lost when he was 63,
yeah.
right? So um, I think it was Gerald Stern, another poet. He was in his 50s before his first book was published.
Yeah.
And then some people write a book when they're 23 and then they don't ever write again. And then some people write intermittently. And even you look at the lifespans of other artists in other mediums, I think about Rodriguez, the Mexican singer who only produced two albums. It was very hard for him to break through. Then his albums disappeared for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then his album became like an anthem in South Africa during the apartheid movement. This
Oh,
this
wow.
Mexican folk singer, and then there's this revival, this international revival that happened before he passed away. So I like to think about how artists it's nonlinear for us. We don't operate the way other people do. We have to let the art take its time, and when it's cooked, it's cooked. It's like a good meal. If it's a
Yeah,
3 day stew, you got to let that stew cook for 3 days. It's not fast food, the size.
absolutely. I just want to hear this again because I think this is such a beautiful thing you said, and now I'm gonna say it all forever. Like artists have their own timeline. That's just That's so necessary, I think, for all of us. Especially for me when I'm laying down in my bed, I'm like, what is life? What am I doing?
And we all go through, I mean, that's the irony of it too, is I can tell you that now,
Hmm.
but I'll have a complete anxiety attack in a few weeks
Yeah,
about all of it. Because the world pulls us, we're in the world,
yeah.
but I think that when we get into that artist, what Willie Perdomo calls our dream space, when we
Mm,
get into that dream space, and we able to kind of block all of that stuff out for a little bit, um, it's refreshing, it's empowering. I think about those artists who like really lived in their art. Like
hmm.
my wife and I were talking about Prince. Like
Hmm.
one thing about Prince is like he lived in his own reality
Yeah,
and he was able to just kind of keep like this is who I am, this is how I live, this is how I operate.
yeah.
There's all these stories about how like he would call up Charlie Murphy or something that was in
Hmm.
Questlove to go like ice skating at 4 a.m. after, because that was his timeline, and I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to think about. that. I think it helps us, but unfortunately, the world, we have jobs, some of us have
Yeah,
families and kids, and it's like,
yeah,
no, the world is telling you actually you gotta be linear again.
yeah. I sorry, I hope you know I was recording this conversation, and if
Oh,
you
that's
don't,
okay. Yeah,
okay, and if you don't want anything to be on this conversation, I will edit it, but I would really like to include some of this because I just want to like say this word again because I think it's so beautiful. Art becomes a way to stargaze. Like I think that
yeah, yeah.
that's so beautiful. Okay, you can say your next poem.
Yeah, and this one's not as dark.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, this one's kind of celebratory. So
Mhm.
this second poem is also from my first book, and
Mhm.
actually these poems are back to back in the book.
Yeah.
They're the second and third poems, and this one is called "The Roads of Borinquen,"
Mm.
and it's about the island where my family, the island of my ancestors.
Mhm.
The roads of Borinquen snake like ignetis plodding down the Toro Verde mountains. They shake and shimmy like Giovanni Hidalgo's palms, like palm trees cambered from sand to sky. They juke jive like wild bougainvilleas splintering into rainforest of cell towers. They reach into salt flats and twirl up into Sunday worship at the sprawling lechoneros of Guavate. The roads of Borinquen slope and careen like guayaba trees caught in the crosswind, like the dirt terraces of Yauco sprouting coffee beans, or the dust of our misguided slang that Esmeralda sweeps from the patio. They taper and they bloat like arteries, pumping sun into the canciones that feed us, swaying like hammocks slung across mango trees, where first kisses seed into copper saints. The roads of Borinquen shapeshift like domino tables once midday strikes. They contort like town criers, slide like razor blades over 4-day-old beards, or the machete blade through the caña that mysteriously makes its way onto our mesas. The roads of Borinquen veer from the promise of the caciques to the promise of 2 for 1 quarter pounders and back again like a waterfall of semis cascading into a landscape of rental cars parked on bates. They curve and they jump like cockfights through the colonial plazas littered with juggling pajaritos, rollerblades, and angelic vagrants as if trying to shake free from the surf shops and department stores like a pair of dusty chancletas.
Mhm.
The roads of Borinquen wine dive upward into the arms of La Virgen on every wall, in every casita in the hillside. They blindside like sparring partners in the gym behind the old sugar mill. The roads of Borinquen burrow through cities named after slain warriors. Jayuya, Calle, Utuado, as if to pour salt on wounds beyond healing. They lull like Liliana, who still laments surrendering the mountains for the city. They sing and surprise like the neighbors springing up on doorsteps at 3 in the morning, armed with guidos and warm rum, screaming "Bomba!" before carrying us gently back to bed, cradling us as we dream. The roads of Borinquen stretch like sunbathing cobwebs. They pull pranks in the form of covert potholes and cow crossings, then invite us to Hoyuda for some steamed langosta. The roads of Borinquen steer into the gullies where the ancestors have buried the village's secrets. They swoop up into the moon that each night promises us a chance to become the myths our masters dumped into the sea.
Oh my